to scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
War is a necessity embedded into the fabric of mankind. Without war, there is no man, and without man, there is no war. The men who advocate for peace above war fail to realize that their definition of peace may not be the same as their fellow man, and how do they plan to change that? Often we portray war as a noble thing, embodying the virtues of courage and bravery, but for those who actually get to see, feel, and hear warfare, they may have some other things to say. Hello, my name is Noah. I like to talk about books I read. Today we're going to be looking at Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse 5. Kurt Vonnegut is a well-known author for his often satirical and comedic works. However, his most popular book is Slaughterhouse 5, first published in 1969. What makes Slaughterhouse 5 particularly interesting, however, is Kurt's personal ties to the fiction. Other books of Kurt's often criticize or mock ideas about religion or humanity as a whole, and although Kurt is a very good author, anybody could go about mocking religion or mankind. The satirical themes of Slaughterhouse 5 are mostly in reference to war, which admittedly is also something that could easily be mocked. Many books and movies and other media have profited off of the lies that have forever been propagated about war. Countless stories have been told about young men who aspire to see war as an honorable and brave thing, and once they finally see what they've wanted, they wish they never had. Slaughterhouse 5 is not exactly just that. When Kurt Vonnegut had graduated from Cornell University, he joined the United States Army during the Second World War. In 1944, during the close of the war, Vonnegut would be taken as a POW by the Germans during the Battle of the Bulge. As a POW, Vonnegut had experienced the thing that made him question everything, and it was not by the hands of the Germans. On the night of February 13th, 1945, the Allies had begun one of the most infamous air raids of the war, the firebombing of Dresden. Dresden was not a city that was at all militarily important to the German war effort, as the city was known for its cultural history and architecture. Out of the German cities that would be important for an Allied bombing, Dresden was not one of them. The firebombing of Dresden would come to be known as one of the Allied terror bombings, which was aimed at destroying German morale, much like how General Sherman of the American Civil War had infamously marched through the state of Georgia in 1864, burning down all infrastructure in his path as a means of destroying the morale of the Confederacy. However, unlike the march through Georgia, the Civil War couldn't compare to the horrors of firebombing and the indiscriminate killing of civilians. German citizens, who many of which have never been sympathetic to the actions of their government, now had to pay with blood in one of the many instances that would take place in World War II. Kurt Vonnegut witnessed all of it firsthand. Slaughterhouse 5 is a book that grapples with the absurdity of war and views war with a heavy-handed sort of nihilism. But what actually is Slaughterhouse 5? In the first chapter, Vonnegut himself expresses that he would like to write a book about what he had experienced during the war. Vonnegut struggles writing about the things he had experienced. It is so short and jumbled and jangled, because there is nothing intelligent to say about a massacre. Vonnegut compares his experience with Dresden with the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah from Genesis in the Bible, and Vonnegut sympathizes with the wife of Lot, who while fleeing the city, disobeyed God's command and decided to look back at the destruction, which turned her into stone. And I love her for that, because it was so human. With the end of the first chapter, Vonnegut declares that he has finished his war book. Now he wants to write about something fun, and so it begins. The main character of the book is now introduced, Billy Pilgrim. Very soon we come to understand that Billy has become unstuck in time. Billy was born in 1922 in Ilium, New York. His childhood and young adulthood are described in brief, emphasizing his ordinary, even passive nature. After college, Billy trains to be an optometrist before being drafted into the United States Army during World War II. He is unprepared for combat, both physically and mentally, and his role as chaplain's assistant further underscores his detachment from warfare. Vonnegut deliberately paints Billy as a weak, reluctant soldier, subverting the typical image of a heroic war protagonist. During the Battle of the Bulge in 1944, Billy is sent to the front lines with no weapons or combat training. He becomes lost behind enemy lines along with 3 other soldiers. This group includes Roland Weary, a delusional and cruel young man who imagines himself as part of a heroic trio he calls the Three Musketeers. Weary resents Billy for ruining his fantasy of wartime glory. After days of wandering in harsh conditions, they are captured by German soldiers. Billy's time travel abilities begin to manifest more clearly. He begins jumping from one moment in his life to another without warning. One moment, he is in the snow being captured by Germans. The next, he is a middle-aged man in a hospital bed, recovering from a plane crash. Vonnegut first mentions Billy's future abduction by aliens from the planet Tralfamadore. This non-linear storytelling reflects Billy's traumatized mental state and introduces the philosophical ideas of fatalism and the nature of time. The Tralfamadorians view all moments as existing simultaneously, which Billy begins to internalize. In many ways, the time travel that Vonnegut uses throughout the book serves as a metaphor for flashbacks and PTSD. The events that Billy experiences are stuck in time and cannot be erased. All Billy can do is continue to live his life as he grapples with the war and all the trauma he has experienced. Throughout the entire book, Billy comes to see that all the lofty lies he has been told about war and the world in general are fiction. The alternate title for Slaughterhouse 5 is The Children's Crusade. Kurt Vonnegut felt that war was comprised of the young and inexperienced youth, which inspired the alternate name alongside Kurt's friend's wife, who thought that a war book shouldn't focus on heroism, but the reality of war. At the center of the novel is the firebombing of Dresden, which Vonnegut experienced firsthand. The city's destruction is depicted with a mixture of cold detail and haunting simplicity. Dresden, known for its cultural beauty and lack of military significance, is reduced to rubble and ash by the Allies. The novel emphasizes the senselessness and cruelty of war, especially the bombing of civilians. Through Billy's eyes, readers witness not heroic battle, but profound suffering, disillusionment, and the breakdown of human dignity. The Tralfamadorians, the aliens who abduct Billy, introduce a philosophy that permeates the novel. All moments in time exist simultaneously, and death is just one moment among many. Their refrain, "So it goes," is repeated every time death is mentioned, signaling acceptance rather than mourning. This philosophy challenges human ideas of free will and fate, suggesting a deterministic universe. For Billy, this perspective provides a way to cope with the horrors he witnessed, but it also promotes an emotional detachment, raising questions about whether fatalism is a necessary defense or a dangerous surrender. Vonnegut's use of irony and dark humor permeates the novel and serves as a powerful tool to critique war. The execution of Edgar Derby for stealing a teapot after surviving the Dresden bombing highlights the absurdity of wartime justice. The title itself, Slaughterhouse 5, refers to the slaughterhouse where the POWs are kept, a grim place ironically transformed into a sanctuary during the bombing. These ironies expose the contradictions inherent in war and challenge the glorification of military conflict often found in literature. Vonnegut litters Slaughterhouse 5 with these ironies, showing how truly absurd war is, alongside the ideals that make it worth fighting for. Towards the end of the novel, Billy is trapped in a zoo where he entertains visitors. His partner, Montana Wildhack, a former adult actress, is shown to have a locket around her neck that reads, "God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and wisdom to always tell the difference." It does not take much explaining to dive into the absurdity that Vonnegut presents us with. The end of Slaughterhouse 5 leaves us with no real answers. There is no result for what Billy has experienced. Dresden and the experiences he had there during the war are left without meaning as a cesspool of violence and scorched bodies embedded into the mind of Billy. Were the Allies right in bombing Dresden? What about Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Would the bombings of these cities help to prevent a larger death count? In many ways, yes. In other ways, no. However, those decisions aren't up to Billy. Billy is only there to experience it, clueless as to how to understand the vile nature of war as he saw it. Underneath the aliens and absurdist characters presented within Slaughterhouse 5 lies the very real nature of young men and how they must forever cope with the feelings that they saw, oftentimes at the hands of the side that they themselves are fighting on. Billy was not G.I. Joe, and neither was Kurt Vonnegut. Billy was a rather weak, imbecilic youth who had to fight against the Third Reich in its years of decay and ends up witnessing hell on earth as an ancient city, mostly populated by civilians, is burned to a crisp. Overall, Slaughterhouse 5 is one of the best written anti-war books of all time. Other books succeed very well in criticizing warfare and the means by which we fight it, but no book does better to show its absurdity than Slaughterhouse 5. I personally enjoyed reading it, and I thought that Kurt's writing style was rather enjoyable. Slaughterhouse 5 is the first and only of Vonnegut's books that I've read, but I may consider reading more of him in due time. I will say that Vonnegut's comedy isn't exactly my favorite, however it certainly was entertaining. I would recommend Slaughterhouse 5 to anyone interested in World War II fiction, as well as anyone who wants to start reading Vonnegut.